So I invite you to send your adult out of the room and allow your child to be present during this talk. We all have both parts. This is a talk that your child part of you really needs to hear because it's the one we're going to empower this morning. Because our adult is getting us in a world of hurt. Our child part knows exactly how to heal this. So our theme this year is timeless wisdom, vision, evolutionary vision. And what that means is we're looking at wisdom that truly does transcend time. It's wisdom that has always been wisdom. It's wisdom that is wisdom now. It's wisdom that will be wisdom into what we call the future. Evolutionary vision is literally catching the vision of life evolving, life unfolding. Our theme this month is pause for guidance, which I think is perfect for this time here on planet Earth. We tend to identify ourselves with doing. And in times where we are under a tremendous amount of anxiety or stress, we seem to have this false belief that doing more will fix it faster. Not so much. Not so much. And so this morning we're going to pause and explore the guidance of sparking imagination. Now, those of you that have been with me for a while know we're going to take some words apart to understand what they mean, because my experience here on planet Earth is while we have an agreed upon book called the dictionary, few of us actually use it. And we all have PhDs in MSU, right? We make stuff up and we act like it's true. And then it becomes true for us. And then we try to communicate with other people who are actually operating from their PhD in MSU, and no one is going to the agreed upon book of definitions. And so we're not communicating with one another. So here's the thing about a spark. And this will crack you up. At least it did me. The origin of the word spark means a lively young fellow. What? I mean, literally, I checked multiple sources because I'm like, who punked my dictionary? And the verb context of sparking in its origin meant to engage in courtship. All right? I'm like, who knew? Certainly not I. So, spark and sparking has evolved over time, much like the word bully that started out meaning good fellow, that now means the complete opposite. Right? So we get to change the words we use. So today we're going to use spark from the point of view of a small fiery particle thrown off of a fire, or a trace of a specified quality or intense feeling. Because it's not always a physical ember. Sometimes there is an emotional spark, which even now as I'm thinking about that and thinking about the first time I kissed this person who is now my wife, I get that first definition of spark. I get that because that was absolutely an intense engagement in courtship, but I wasn't relating to it that way at the moment. Sparking can also be a point of ignition. And if you're any bit of a survivalist, or even if you're not, if I had one of the cigarette lighters over here, that point of ignition is created by friction. Right? In a cigarette lighter, it's a metal wheel rubbing against a piece of flint. Right? Out in nature, two rocks. Right? The blade on your lawnmower hitting a rock. We know that can ignite a fire. Right? Your weed eater can grab a rock and throw it, and it can hit on another rock as it lands and spark. Okay? So when we think about conflict, we tend to think of it as a negative thing. And yet, in the wintertime, your heating system is not going to ignite without some friction. If you cook with a gas stove, you're not cooking anything without a point of friction, because it's required to ignite the gas that's coming into your stove. And so perhaps part of what we can do in this process this morning is reframe this idea of friction, that maybe it's not such a negative thing when it's used correctly. When it's used correctly. Because when it's used incorrectly, we start forest fires. We burn down homes. We burn down entire cities. When we use it incorrectly, we start fights with one another over the silliest stuff. I mean, I can tell you, because I've been one of these people, that, get into arguments, and if you ask me midway through the argument what I'm even arguing about, I don't know. I'm so ignited by the passion of being right that it doesn't even matter what the argument is. I'm just being right. Anybody that witnessed the Board of Supervisors meeting this past week got to witness some of that behavior. People showed up with a preemptive argument. And even when what was happening in the room was happening in their favor, they argued with it so that they could read their argument. It was bizarre to watch. And even the folks, the supervisors would interrupt them and say, you understand that we're actually giving you what you've asked for and more, right? And they just kept going like they didn't even hear it. It was bizarre. What are we doing? We're so busy in our position. Folks, imagination. This is the word we need to look at, because we got sparked down. We're sparking. We're in full-fledged inferno mode with one another. Imagination lives in the gap. The imagination is seeing what's not visible. It takes no imagination for me to see this light turn. It takes no imagination for me to see these chairs. They're right there. It takes no imagination for me to see each of you. It takes some imagination for me to see you out there in virtual land, because I can't see your body. Right? Imagination is what happens in the gap. Now, there's two things that happen. There is triggered memory, and then there's actual imagination. Most of us are living in triggered memory and calling it imagination. When we see something is missing, if I were to show you a picture, right, and leave out, like if I show you a picture of a horse's head and leave out its nose, you're going to fill in that picture in your mind from memory of the horse's nose. Right? That's not imagination. That's memory. And so much of what is happening to us here on planet Earth right now is triggered memory. We're trying to evolve as a species. We're trying to evolve in consciousness. And yet, we don't know how to let go of our monuments and our memories. We don't know how to let go of our past as being our present. Because we think we are defined by those things. Forgot my book here. Excellent book, I Don't Know, The Way of Knowing, by D.E. Paulk. And one of the things that D.E. Paulk recognizes is that the ego keeps us from ourselves, the way the ego functions these days. Right? Because the ego, I am what I have. I am what I do. I am what others think about me. That's how the ego frames us. All of that is in memory. None of that is in imagination. So trying to imagine who we actually are, we have to get to these questions. If we are what we have, who are we when we don't have? What happens? What happens to us when we don't have all of a sudden? If I am my home and all of the things in it, when a fire comes through and burns my entire town to the ground, now who am I? If we are what we do, who are we when we do less, do differently, or do nothing? How many of us are so identified with the work we do in the world that if our job changes or goes away, we don't know fundamentally who we are. And this is the big one. If we are what people think of us, who are we when their thoughts become fickle? Their approval of us diminishes, or their perception of us changes. Who are you then? Who are you when you wake up and the person that you're sharing life with says, this doesn't work for me anymore. I need to go. Who are you when the people that you associate with all of a sudden change their belief system and yours doesn't line up with theirs anymore? Who are you? If we relegate ourselves to outside of ourselves, we never knew who we were in the first place. Right? Here's what else D.E. Paulk says. I don't know is foundational to faith. I don't know is an evidence of worship. I don't know is the beginning of knowing. Because as Emma Curtis Hopkins taught, if we fail to deal with what we currently believe through the effective use of denials, and she wasn't talking about denying that it exists, she's talking about denials in saying, no, that's unreal. If we fail to unknow, there's no room to know. And what we're looking to know is already there. It's in the gap. We're just not seeing it. It's in the gap between what others have told us we are and the lies that we've bought. We've all been socialized. It's not a negative. It's just a thing. Right? We've been socialized generationally. The reason that we wear clothes is because somewhere through the process of socialization, it became a good idea and an accepted thing to wear clothes. And if we lived in a culture where that was different, we'd all be running around naked and no one would care. No one would care. But let a group of people decide that that's their new culture. And suddenly we care deeply because it's out of alignment with what everybody's doing. Well, this idea of everybody is the biggest lie. That's the biggest lie. Here's the thing about everybody. This is the one thing that I know is true about everybody. Everybody does it different. But we keep looking for sameness. We're not going to find it. We're made of the same stuff, but we're intentionally made to be diverse. Because the only thing the infinite can expand is its experience of itself. How does it do that? Through its imagination. Through seeing a new version of itself in the gap of what is and what might be. That's the stuff of our childhood. So I invite you. I'm going to do a little meditation. So I invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. If you're listening to this while you're driving, please don't do that. I say that because I've talked to people who do. Like, no. And I want you to go back. Go back to a place in your childhood. And it's going to be different for everybody, so I'm not going to put an age on it. But go back to that place in your childhood where life was magical, where you believed what you imagined, where you could see the magic that wasn't there in physical form. And bring that precious, wise being into this moment, into a world that is navigating a pandemic, into a world that is navigating political division, into a world that seems overly invested in making one another wrong. And ask that part of you, what's here that I'm not seeing? Where's the magic that will heal? Where's the magic in how you want to show up in this world? No matter what anybody thinks about me, I want to show up like this. This is how I want to play. Because I know it's true. That freedom, that place of childlike magic freedom. We're just going to rest in the silence for about a minute and just let that part of you tell you. Then I'm going to share 3 questions that you can give this beautiful, childlike part of you permission to play with this week, to inform you. Does my imagination run away from my highest good or toward my highest good? Am I mindful of a triggered memory versus a sparked imagination? Am I committed to taking time each day to imagine the best for myself and all beings everywhere? I invite you to empower that part of you this weekend, to hold you accountable to those 3 questions. They will be in the newsletter, so you have them to reference. You don't have to remember them. And as we close out, imagine the divine, the infinite, what created you, speaking to you. Hold your breath. Make a wish. Count to 3. Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look, and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin traveling in a world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do, do it. Want to change the world? There's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. And so it is.